Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmitt Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmittmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. This is your host, Emmitt Muckles. You can find the podcast on Stitcher. You can find it on iTunes. You can just Google the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast and something will come up. Or you can go to the ultimate place, which is emmittmuckles.com. That's emmittmuckles.com. Today, my guest is Debbie N with a period, Goldberg. I don't want you to think I'm saying it's N Goldberg. It's N, the letter, which is her middle initial, Goldberg. Debbie, how are you today?
I'm great, Emmitt. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm really looking forward to our talk today.
Yes, I was looking at your information over the last 24 hours, and I keep looking at it, and I was looking at the one picture that you have on your bio, the one with the hat and the glasses.
Yes.
And I'm like, she reminds me of someone. And I'm thinking back to when I had hair and I was a little thinner. And I was like, who does she remind me of? And then it hit me this morning as I was brushing my teeth. You remind me of Paula Abdul in the Straight Up video.
Oh my gosh.
So don't laugh, because Paula was hot. That was the thing back in the day. You know what I'm saying?
I remember, and I will take that as a compliment.
That's how it was intended to play out. I was hoping you didn't get offended and like, I don't look like Paula. What's wrong with you?
No,
so
not at all.
Deb is an author, and she is here to help us. She's here to give us a different perspective about how we consider our existence, how we consider our life, how we consider this reality. Because particularly nowadays, we are in a situation where the world is not quite settled. And Debbie is an author, so she gives us some insight on how we can communicate with the greater part of the universe. Did I get that right?
Yes, that sounds perfect to me.
So how would you say it?
How would I say what I do?
Yeah, what would be your elevator speech?
I actually lead people to within themselves to find their divine self and what their purpose is that leads them to healing and understand why they came into this lifetime and what they're here to do.
And you had an awakening yourself to come to where you are right now. Can you describe or take us on that journey of where you were and how you've come to be now?
Sure. I was a mental health and drug and alcohol therapist for 18 years, and I went to college in my 30s. That was part of a wake up. I had a dream one night when I went to sleep after praying for 5 years for some direction. I was in an unhappy marriage. I had 2 young children, and I didn't feel like I was where I was supposed to be in my life in any way, shape, or form. And I had a dream one night, and it showed me that I needed to go to college, that I was supposed to be a therapist. And the next day, I just got up and enrolled into Penn State University, where I lived. And I started taking classes and never looked back. That was 1991. And I went through school, became a therapist. I had a private practice in 2011. And I was working very hard. I was working 12 to 14 hours a day, trying to prove myself, not taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And just totally rejecting my needs, not even knowing what my needs were. I was just so driven. And 2014, I got into a little spat with my son and his wife, and yeah, and that was very upsetting to me. And over the next couple of months after that, I started to think about what am I doing that is maybe making problems between us. And I started delving into myself, and I actually came across somebody's information, Margaret Paul, who is a psychologist that has a program called Inner Bonding, and it's about healing the inner child and doing it with a spiritual guidance. And I started looking into her, and it's really interesting because I was just writing about this, that when you are working, you're asked to do CEU credits for your job, for your
So
license.
that's continuing education credits, correct?
Yes, and nobody ever says anything about personal development. And I had never been on a spiritual journey um, consciously, and I decided that I'm going to actually do something personal in personal development. And I went to this woman's workshop, and she does an guided imagery meditation. And I had never meditated before. I've taught people relaxation skills, but I've never used meditation. And during this meditation, and it's to meet your spiritual guidance, and Jesus shows up.
Let, Stop right there.
Okay.
This is what I want to ask you. So you say Jesus shows up. So Jesus comes to you. So is it a voice, or is it a manifestation of image? How did that come about?
Right. So in guided imagery, you are being guided to use your imagination to make a relaxing place in your mind. So think of it maybe as daydreaming, and you're just using your imagination to follow along. So my happy place, my relaxing place is by a pool, in a pool, swimming, floating. And while I was at the pool, this man shows up, and he's about in his 30s, shoulder length dark hair. And so I'm seeing this as if you were daydreaming or watching a movie in your own mind. And he just sat with me, and it felt really good. And I didn't know it was Jesus at the time, but my inner child knew it was Jesus and kept telling me it was. I could not wrap my head around why Jesus would come to me. I'm Jewish. I'm a cultural Jew. I was never brought up with religious values other than that, and we never talked about God in my household. But I always felt that there was a God, a source of love that was guiding me. I don't know how I felt that, but I always felt that. And so when I had this meditation happened with this visual download and it was just amazing. And it started taking on a life of its own, as if I was not directing the movie. The movie just started going on its own. And what started to happen was I was laying in a raft, and all of a sudden, all these wounded parts of me, different aged me's that were not healed, appeared in this raft with me. And I did not understand what was going on, but Jesus got into the pool with me, and he took my arms and wrapped them around these other parts of me, these other selves. And the healing that started to happen was profound. I still didn't understand what was happening. I've never experienced anything like that. And it was very moving. and it changed my life forever, because then I knew that I had access to actually see spirit, and within a few weeks I recognized that I could hear. And I didn't know that. I was thinking to myself, this is really nice. I meditate every day, and Jesus and I sit by the pool, and we just are with each other, and it feels really good, but why aren't we talking? And then I heard a voice tell me to just say hello.
So all this time, you were having this encounter, and you were just like, I'm
Yeah.
just going to hang out. If you don't talk, I'm not going to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even understand what was happening within me. It was just so, I had not been a seeker. I didn't have any information about the spiritual journey. And so I said hello, and he said hi. And then we just started conversing. And it started a huge spiritual reparenting of me.
Well, that's a good word, reparenting. That's
Yes.
very good.
Yeah, I use that because that's what it feels like. You're being spiritually reparented to be deprogrammed from who you learned that you are through life on earth, through society, through your family, through culture. And you start learning that you are divine, and that you are connected to source all the time. And then we went into healing. And so much of my over 2 years, a lot of it has been healing, parts of my life that needed to be healed, things that I believed about myself that were not true, which are things that we all believe about ourselves, is the I'm not worthy, no one values me, eh, that all of that terrible things that we all have as being a human being, these thoughts about ourselves that are not true. And then teaching me what life really is, and seeing through the illusion of life. And so it's actually bringing you up to higher levels of consciousness. It is maturing your soul through nurturing and loving you. It's just, it's the most fascinating, most beautiful thing I've ever experienced.
So let me ask you about there was a specific time period that you had this encounter, which was about 2 years, you said.
Yeah, about 2.5 years ago. It was September 2014.
So how did you know that period was over and that you were ready to move to the next level, which is begin for the book and your podcast and moving forward? How did that transpire?
Right. As I keep getting reparented, and I kept wanting to know what my gifts were. So I started to hear from God. I was brought a children's story from my inner child. That was the first thing that happened, which was probably 2 months after I started that process. And I was very focused on wanting to know what my purpose is, what my gifts are, because we all have gifts that we're not aware of. And last February 2016, a few months before that, I started getting this feeling that I'm going to be writing, and I've never written before. But I was excited about this feeling about writing. And last February, Jesus just said, you need to get some paper and a pen, and we're going to write, and I'm just going to dictate to you.
Now, this seems to be a reoccurring theme in some of my guests that I have encountered. For instance, there was a young lady, well, she's a woman, and as a matter of fact, she was Jewish as well, and it's about, do they serve bagels in heaven? And she said the same thing. She's like, Emmitt, I come from a Jewish background. She's like, I may not be practicing, but that was the faith that revolved around my life. And if you know anything about Judaism, Jesus is not the focus, to put it in a nice way.
Uh-huh.
And she said, but I kept having these encounters, referencing Jesus or about Jesus, letting me know how precious life is and that this is just a form of existing on this planet, what we have. And we all are always, as you said, connected to source. But, and so when you start telling people about this, how did that go over?
People didn't understand. It felt really lonely because I had all of this amazing stuff going on inside of me. And it was really interesting because one part of me didn't trust it at all, which is our ego. It's all fear-based. So that part of me was very fearful about hearing anything that Jesus or God or the angels would say to me. And the other part of me was like, this is so right. This is home. I know that there's nothing wrong. There's nothing to fear. And luckily, I've allowed myself to let that part of me keep running with this. So I talked to my family about it, and they didn't understand. People think I'm crazy. And then, yeah, it was really hard. My husband tries to be so supportive, and he is, and he's trying to understand it. But he doesn't understand all the things that I am learning. And then I was very scared to even tell people because we automatically think people are going to say you're crazy.
Yeah.
And, here I was a therapist for so long. And in that community, you're looked upon as you're mentally ill if you hear voices or see things. And I knew that I was not, I was completely fine hearing and seeing that there was nothing wrong with me. So it's really difficult to bring this out, and your own fears of how people are going to react to you made it really hard. And so what happened for me is I eventually had to find a community of people that understand, have been on a spiritual journey, and have had similar things happen with them. And so then you know that you have found a community of people that you can actually talk to and really connect on a soul level.
All right, so let me ask you a few questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we here? Have you gotten one of those things like why we're all here and what we're going through right now? Because it seems kind of crazy right now, and I feel that there is a awakening, but is that, so are we here because we're going, I understand that we're spiritual beings living a physical existence.
Yes.
But we were given some things, and this is a convoluted question. I'm sorry, I do this. But there's so many wonderful thoughts. I have things written on the paper, but then other things come up during the conversation. We are spiritual beings living a physical existence. And then we were given these gifts of ego and free will.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems we keep getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just part of the journey that we're on?
Yes. From what I understand, and this has all been taught to me by Jesus, is that Earth is a playground for souls to mature to higher levels of consciousness, and there is a maturity process. There is soul growth happening. If you can imagine that souls are different ages. So if you just look at a baby, that a soul goes through a growth period similar to how a baby has to learn. Now, and that we do that by incarnating and going through the human process. Everything is energy. Life is all energy. We're energy. That he's told me that life is an illusion, and it's like a 3D virtual reality. Our soul is here with us in our human form, and our soul is also wherever our soul exists, whether you want to call that the heavens, outer space, whatever works for you. And that is why we're always connected to the collective consciousness. So we're all energy, and we take on this form, this illusionary form of human. And it is to learn karmic lessons, which are not consequences. They are lessons of maturity. And so it is our soul's job to forget when it's born, that it's a soul, and that it made a contract with God or spirit or source, whatever you prefer, that we made a contract of what we wanted to learn in this lifetime, and also what our purpose, our divine purpose is in this lifetime. And eventually we're supposed to go through our life, these karmic lessons, and that we each have a time that is specific to us in which we actually wake up. And it could be any time for anybody, whether it's young, middle-aged, or old age. And then there's some people that are not supposed to wake up this lifetime, because that's just the way that their journey is. There is no wrong or right. It is all about experiencing life and working through the lessons and maturing. So he tells me that everything that we see is actually a reflection or a mirror of what is inside of us. So we see in other people, we see the ego, we see our ego, we all have the same one, and that we see our higher self in other people. We see all our shadow side that we have. We're pretty complicated. We think on different levels, and we have all these different parts of ourself, and that we are actually seeing reflections of ourself outside of ourself. And it's learning how to have love and compassion for ourselves and for other people. So we're a bunch of souls having a collective experience together. We share the same consciousness. So I got to a point where people are actually speaking what my thoughts are that I'm not sharing.
Oh my goodness, that's a good.
Yeah. And I started going, these people are speaking my conscience, and sometimes they're my ego, sometimes they're my higher self. And I'm like, how did these people know what I'm thinking? But we're all doing that to each other because we actually share the same consciousness. And, I have been taught so much stuff through angels, through God, through Jesus, about higher consciousness, but there is a process of integration and really understanding it. So as I've been learning all of these things, I have not integrated everything because a lot of it just sounds so absurd, but I go through a process of saying, okay, I'm going to work on this one topic or lesson about higher consciousness, and then it starts to just come together and I see it.
Okay.
So we don't know. Yeah, so we don't always understand what we're learning. It makes no sense because we're trying to wrap our brain around it, and it's our ego saying this just doesn't work. I don't get it, and the ego will never get it. So as you have gone on a journey and you're working with guidances, you learn how to build trust and faith, and then that you're being taught something in a certain way, and this is all about your journey. It's your truth, and that you may not understand it, but eventually it will catch up to you.
So what is one of the most absurd things that you've experienced in this period.
Absurd in maybe understanding something?
Yes, where a lesson that came to you and you were like, that is so absurd.
Yes.
What's one of those examples
Yeah, I got a big one. My history, my story, because the way this is explained to me is, imagine that each one of us are in our own movie, and we are the movie star. We're the author, we're the producer, we're the screenwriter, we are the projector, we are the audience in our own movie. And that this is all projected from within, that there's no truth to really what is happening on the outside. So my movie, my story is filled with abuse growing up. And I was raped by my stepfather when I was 15.
ooh,
And yeah, and Jesus, as I was writing in the books that he dictated, and it came to a part about the illusion of life, and I said, well, what about things like this? I've experienced this. I've had body memories. How can you tell me that this is an illusion? And he said, it is. He said, look at it as a dream, because it didn't really happen. And on one hand, I thought, well, you know what? If I didn't really experience that, then I'm not really scarred. And that I have nothing to be shameful about or guilty about or angry and so that part of me was like, wow, that could really take a lot of weight off of me. And the other part of me got angry and said, I don't think this is funny. Like, I don't understand why coming here and living this illusion and experiencing violent things, terrible things that make people suffer, and I suffered, why is that okay?
Yeah, that was my next question, was about suffering and pain that we all endure at some level. At some level, we have, some people are like, well, I stubbed my toe. Some people have deep emotional trauma and pain in this life. And that was my question, was how is that viable? Or why is that there? Why is there war? Or why are people just evil?
Right. Good questions. I asked all of these things. And, I got to the point where, and it took me a long time to integrate the fact that did not happen. That was just a story I came here with. And the karmic illusion of what happens in life is all part of that. And it's all projected by the ego purposefully. And my issue was my ego. I just wanted to be angry that I had no sense of humor about the experience or other people's suffering experience. And then I realized that I really don't understand all of this stuff, that I have no understanding of the immenseness of really what the world is, about source, about God, about any of it. And so basically, when I take that stance of I'm angry, it's saying that I know better than you. and you're saying that with really not having all of the information. So you're just making it based on your own experience and what you see and what you think and feel, without having the rest of the knowledge. So when I realized that was just a stance that I was taking, and that I truly don't understand all of what goes on in this life, or what I'm here, not why I'm here, but I don't understand how it all works, the whole mechanism works, this illusion, and I just needed to let go of I know better than God. And once I did that, it felt a lot better. And I've been able to integrate all of this and understand that it is an illusion and it was part of my story. Now, the other piece of this is because we're all energy, Jesus said that all the thoughts and the feelings are energy too. And all of this energy started at the beginning of humanity. And the fear, because things were really scary at the beginning of time, and people were not evolved, the earth was dangerous, and this fear is so tied into us on a cellular level as a human that, and look at it all as energy. And then that energy just keeps growing and the fear just keeps growing. And as through time, even though there's no such thing as time and space, that as people have evolved, these fears evolved in this frenetic way that we all own, and some to more and less of a degree based on where your soul maturity is. And this energy, actually, this is all spiritually orchestrated, and it is the ego that this energy actually fuels the ego to create the illusion.
So to me, it sounds like the ego is the devil.
Well, yes, and for a long time I thought that the ego was the devil too, but actually it's spiritually, divinely orchestrated to help us learn our lessons. And it is part of our humanity. And really what the goal is that the soul needs to overcome the ego, because the soul got buried by the ego. Because when we're in childhood, as soon as we start getting wounded, we start to align with the ego that always wants to protect us, that thinks that we're going to be in danger all the time. And the ego is totally irrational. It's there to protect us. And so it is part of us, and we have to learn to love it and not listen to it. So it's like we have to learn how to love all parts of us. And there's several.
Whoa, wait, go back. When you say there's several of us, so one of the things with the Billionaire Lifestyle is the fact that at the very least we are a trinity, which is you are a mind, you are a body, and you are a spirit. And that triangle is working in conjunction to be this existence that you are now. And
Yes.
one of the big things to me, and I felt this for a while, is that as we evolve or as we move through life from childhood, usually we have one of those things that's firing on all cylinders, but not all of them are firing on all cylinders at the same time. So either we're spiritually aware, but we're out of shape, or we can't think right and can't rationalize things with the mind, or there's a misconnection between the mind. You know what I'm saying? But there's something, and that seems like one of the objectives for us to move towards is finding out those parts. And like I said, that's the minimum that I know. Finding out those parts and getting those into one entity.
Yeah, it's to integrate all of it. So you are integrating all these different parts of yourself. And yes, you might be operating on a different level at any given time during the day. And as a whole being, you know that I can be sad and I could be happy at the same time, or I can be spiritual, but there's a part of me that's hurting right now. Or there's so many different ways to look at this, that I'm spiritually connected, but yeah, I'm not in my body right now, or I'm not taking care of my body. So the idea is to know that all of this exists and that all these parts make up the whole of who we are, and learn how to integrate and love all of the parts, because it is all purposefully, we're made this way. We're all divine. The whole part of us, every single part is divine. Our humanity, and it's really hard to look at us as not as something separate. It's easy to look at our soul as something separate, or the highest part of ourselves. But we are all one. And this integration process is actually takes a lot of work of digging and digging and digging to see all the faces that lie within you, and embracing them all, not judging them, and loving yourself and having compassion.
I can believe that. And one of the things for me that seems to have evolved throughout our history is humans have seemed to separate themselves from each other. And even in the same biological sphere, whether it be race or country or something like that, historically, you've had these individuals who said, I'm greater than the rest of you and I'll take care of you, such as kings and nobility and lords and you name it. And it seems like we're always trying to better ourselves, not for the fulfillment of our prophecy, but for this earthly bound keeping up with the Joneses, I want to say. One of the things I'm always saying is that we are trying so desperately to appear like the king. So if you think back when people were, let's say the 1600s in England, so you had your commoners, and then you had your people who were a little bit up, who were probably the shopkeepers and business owners. And then you had your lords and governors, and then you had your king. Well, the king had the most impressive stuff. So it seems, particularly in America, where we're always, I got to get a bigger house because that's what people will think I'm great. Or I have to have this next Lexus that's coming out. I have to have the latest cell phone. But it seems like, from what you're telling me, that is not the key. We're actually getting away from where we're supposed to be and trying to ascertain all these physical, worldly things. Is that true?
Right. Yeah. So I guess if you look at everything as energy, so is money. So everything is, and it's about how you relate to everything. And it is the ego that is always looking for approval and validation. And because we're so separated from ourselves, and we don't know the stuff's going on within us, we are looking to the outside to prove our self-worth. And so once you get to a point of, because we all come into this life fully abundant. We all come in with everything that we need. We have the ability to create and express ourselves, and that's really what our divine purposes are, and we all do it in our own way. So when you decide that I don't need something, but I would like to have this. I would like to have this, but not because it gives me value. It's because I enjoy it. That's a different place. That's a very different place. Like, I don't need to have this because it does, like, I'm not looking for something to define me or value me. We're already valued. We don't value ourselves. And the separation that we see on the outside, what I've learned is really a reflection of the separation that we feel on the inside. It is what we do to it. We let our ego beat us up. We say bad things to ourselves. We think bad things about ourselves. We think bad things about other people. And really what we're seeing is the reflection of this dichotomy that's inside of us on the outside of us. And, and some of us have had really crazy struggles throughout this life, and I believe that we keep incarnating because that's what Jesus says. He says that we are constantly going to incarnate because we need to keep growing higher consciousness, and there is no limit on knowledge, that it's infinite. And so that is why we keep incarnating, and so for maturity purposes.
Excuse me.
So a lot of people have taken a lot of their anger, and I believe since it's all energy, it follows us from one life to the next. And if you're not doing the work that you need to do to overcome these things, it consumes you. And then you then act out on all of that. And that is why we have so much violence in the world. However, each person is playing a role regardless of whether they're being in their highest or being in their worst. They are all playing a role, which doesn't make sense either, for us to learn lessons about other people. It's about having compassion. It's about understanding the role of violence, that it's not okay. And I think that we've gotten to a place on Earth that things are pretty bad. And that's why there's such a push right now, and there's so many people waking up and so many people doing the same type of work that I'm doing and what you're doing to create awareness that there's something more than meets the eye.
So let me delve into this. We're going to get into the books in a minute.
Okay.
Can you give me a few action items for people who feel their awakening coming, but they have no direction? What are some exercises or some things that people can do to move their journey forward a little quicker or with a little more purpose that they're comfortable with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, the most important thing is having some quiet time for meditation. And for people that have trouble quieting their mind, which is a lot because the ego is always chattering.
Yeah, it is.
And we got chatter going on from all different places, wounds that haven't been healed. And so the guided imagery type of meditation where somebody's leading you and you're actually just using your imagination to go to a happy place or a relaxing place. Those help because somebody's talking you through it and you're still relaxing, but you're keeping your mind more focused on what you're being asked to do to create quietness within you and to listen. And I tell everybody that every single one of us can hear with our heart, meaning that's where your soul is, that's where you're connected to source. So whether you believe, I believe in God, so I use the name God. And so God talks to us through our heart. And every single one of us just know what we're being told. We don't have to hear a word. Our heart translates what spirit is saying to us. So if you can't hear with like auditorily, and if you can't see images happening, because a lot of people can't, which we all can. This comes down to comfort zone. Like most people don't want to see spirit. I didn't want to see spirit. I was scared of the boogeyman. and that was the last thing that I would be like, oh my God, I'm seeing. And I can see with my eyes closed or open. So, but I got used to it and I realized that it's just love. It's just all loving energy. So that's all that matters. Now I see in form. But for each one of us, we see spirit energy in whatever is the most comfortable thing for us.
You have to explain that to me.
So some people see it as light.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. So when you have images, and I can see form. I see Jesus. I see Jesus as Jesus. I see God as a man. Now, everything is energy. There is no form, but that is the way my being, my person, my ego, whatever, is saying, I can relate to this in form rather than just energy. And so I'm seeing God as a male, which I asked, why do I see God as a male when it's energy? And it's because part of it is the programming that we've all been through to learn that God is male. And the other part of it was I needed to have a strong male role model of love in my life. So that is why I see God as a male right now. And I see angels, I don't necessarily see them with wings. I see them as form, as men or women. Now, some people will see spirit energy as an animal. Some people will see spirit energy as just light or a tree, or it could be anything, a relative, whatever feels comfortable for that person. There is no wrong or right. So if you do start to have images when you're meditating and you're seeing a guide, I call a spirit guide, whoever that is, you can see it in form as an animal, as light, as a tree, as a butterfly. It could be anything that you want, because that is the way you chose to relate to that energy.
That does make sense, because when I meditate, for instance, I see colors. I see colors of light. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm not even there until I see those colors. Mm-hmm. And it's usually, your eyes are closed, and that's when I know I'm starting to get into it. When I'm doing good. When the colors start to come, I'm like, oh yeah. And for me particularly is the color green. So if the color green comes into my closed eye focus, then I'm like, yeah. So it's usually a color combination of greens, blues, and reds that are manifesting in my meditative state. And then it goes to absolutely nothing, where my timer goes off, and I'm like, that was 20 minutes. I thought it was like 3. But tell me about some of the things that led you to writing the book. So you have a couple of titles out that are available on Amazon.
Yeah. I put out 3 books last year under the name of Creating a Life Worth Living, and Jesus dictated those to me. I couldn't own them yet. I couldn't own my gift. I couldn't own putting myself out there saying I channeled Jesus. And so I just said, okay, here's these books. They're Jesus's books. And I put them out. And then I had...
You're like, I didn't do this. This wasn't me.
Yeah, right? And because that's part of the spiritual process. A lot of times we find out what our gifts are, and we're like, I don't know about that one. I don't like it. And because we haven't matured into it. And so the end of last year, I met somebody who asked me if I wanted to republish with them and change the name and the book covers. And that gave me an opportunity to have the books that Jesus gave me and write my spiritual journey into them. And so the first volume is Are You Ready to Listen, God? And that came out in January. The series name is called A Divinely Ordered Life. Now, my volume 2 will be out in July on Amazon, and that is called God's Covenant. And the covenant is about the agreement that we made with God of what we're going to do this life, and that we are supposed to come into fulfilling that. And all of these spiritual guides are with us to help us fulfill that contract. The third book will probably be out in late fall, and that'll be called The Scriptures of Heaven, which means basically everything is in complete divine order, whether it looks like it or not, whether we like it or not. Everything is divinely ordered.
So what about the books? For instance, you did a series with creating a life worth living, and then you departed from that. And I'm not sure of the historical order of these. Are you ready to listen? And how did those come into play?
Well, Jesus asked me to write them. He said he had some books that he wanted to dictate to me. And so I just wrote whatever I heard. And he also gave me this timeline of when they should be released. That was a whole process in itself because I've never been an author. I've never written. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I was not a good writer. Luckily, my husband edits really well, and I went with a publishing company. It was a very difficult process, and so when I had the opportunity to redo those books, to edit them, I really was happy to actually own them and start bringing them together as the way that they were meant to be. Because my contract is having to write these books about my story. And so that's what I'm doing. Now, there's a fourth book that won't be out, I don't know, maybe January of next year, that was dictated by Archangel Michael. And it's all about our intuition and learning how that we have a navigation system within us, which is our intuition, and learning how to, to live by that intuition.
So how can we get back to it for those who are novice, who are wanting to be a better them? How can we listen to what the world is trying to tell us? Not even the world, the universe, the omniverse is trying to tell us.
Yeah, I think you need to start asking questions, and I know that you have to actually invite spirit into your heart to talk to you. That this is not something that spirit is not aggressive or like assertive in the way that we see things here. You actually have to invite it in, and so you can start meditating and asking some questions. Just start with one question. Just say hello. Who's there with me? Who's here guiding me? Can I hear you? Can you speak to me? And just listen. And you start with your heart, listening through your heart, and see, if you can hear auditorily. But you need to start opening your heart that you're not here by yourself, that you are so loved and so guided, and every step it's already ordered. Our lives, since there's no time and space, there's no past, present, and future. Everything is happening at the same time. So our life, we've already done what our life, it's already happened. And so if you start inviting spirit in to talk with you, to start asking questions, that you're interested in knowing what spirit's will is for you. What is your life about? What's your divine purpose? Although I know with me, it all started with, like, we're going back to ground zero, and we need to start working on your health. That was my focus at first. Is they were saying you need to get yourself in balance because you are not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept hearing every single day, even though I wanted to know other things. It was like, no, we're focusing on your health. You're working too much. So start by deep breathing, meditating. Your breath will always bring you back to your heart. So deep breathing actually takes your stress away. It is so healthy in every single way to use deep breathing practices.
So let me ask you about your deep breathing practices, because I've learned to do this, and I did it today. Right before we were doing this interview, I was in the gym. I was on the elliptical. My heart rate was up to about 140 beats a minute.
Wow.
And I said, I'm going to drop this.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I went up a level and dropped it down to about 125, simply by breathing. which is
Mm-hmm.
breathe in through your nose, fill your lungs, let your belly fill up,
Yep.
and then slowly let that air out through your mouth. And it is
Excellent.
amazing. I tried it because of the I can't think of the method that I used it to go to sleep as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when I start doing it on the treadmill, on the elliptical, and I'm moving at a nice clip, and my heart rate just drop, drop, drop.
Yep.
And as soon as I stop, it starts to climb right back up.
Yep.
So you're absolutely right. And it is amazing that many times we don't talk about the simplest thing that can be so beneficial for our life, which is just breathing.
Yes. Yeah. It is the most natural thing, and it is the movement of everything in life. If you really think about it, your breath in and out, your heart pumps in and out, the water that goes back and forth with the tide. Everything in life has that same rhythm. And so to get back to yourself, your breath is always going to take you there. And the way that you describe that is perfect. It is the best way I know how. There's so many different types of breathing, but this is the one that I use, the same as you, and that is what I teach my clients to use.
Now, for the audience, the Billionaire Lifestyle audience, what is your next move? What are you doing in the future? Are you having workshops? I know that you have a podcast, and can you tell people a little bit about the podcast as well, in addition to what you're going to be doing in the next 12 to 20 months?
Sure. Well, I'm going to be putting some more books out. I'm in the process of writing a fifth one. I have somebody that asked me to write a chapter in their book on health and wellness. I have written a webinar that I'm going to start teaching people what I have learned and how they can get in contact with their own guidance to lead them there, the same way that I learned how, and then to mentor them through the spiritual journey, because, all of these things happen and you don't know what's going on, and you don't understand it. There's no framework for it. And so I am developing a framework to understand the spiritual journey, and I'll be teaching that to people. I'm also learning how to balance our energy. And you do that with your mind, actually, during meditation, of being able to balance your own energy. And that's all we need to do. We just need to balance our own energy and infuse it with the love and joy that's already part of our soul. And I plan on doing some speaking engagements, and I plan on taking this out as far as I can to help people to know that they are not alone and that they don't have to suffer, that healing happens on this level in a way that it doesn't in any other way.
Awesome. Well, we're probably past the time that I usually go. And do you have any closing words for the Billionaire Lifestyle audience?
That there is always hope. Never, ever give up. That there is so much more to you than you have any idea, that you can do this. You can go inside and connect with yourself, and that all the journey can seem overwhelming, but there is help. You are guided, and you are never by yourself, and you are being loved, whether you can see it or feel it.
Gotcha. Awesome. So awesome. And let's go through everything now to find out where we can contact you, or the Billionaire Lifestyle audience can contact you. Your website, your Google, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Google Plus, and your LinkedIn if you have one. So where can people reach you?
Sure. My website is debbiengoldberg.com. My Facebook is Deb Goldberg. And it's really easy. Everything's under my name. My LinkedIn is Deb Goldberg. I try to make it easy, and my Twitter is Debbie N. Goldberg. So my name is, you can find me just by Googling, making sure that the N is in there, because there are a lot of other women out there with the same name.
Yes, there are.
Uh-huh.
So make sure you have the N before you have Goldberg. So
Yes.
and that's DEBBIE.
BIE.
Got
Yeah.
you. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. This is the time where I close out, and I say this just about every podcast. Here's what you guys have to do. You really have to take the time to have a practice with yourself. And the way I typically do it, or I suggest people to do it, because we have this wonderful tool that is in all of our houses, it's in our cars, it's everywhere, which is the mirror. Look in the mirror and take at least 2 minutes with no sound on, turn the radio off, turn the water off, just stare in the mirror. And I want you to admire the reflection that's in the mirror. I want you to notice all those little things. Notice the little crevices in your eyes, the moles, the sunspots, all the things that you may find a little weird about yourself. Notice that those are the things that make you you, and someone loves that about you. So it is imperative that you recognize just how special you are and love yourself. Take that time, because if you love yourself, that allows the multitude to love you as well. And then it'll just spread, and everyone will be where they need to be. Until next time, this has been the Billionaire Lifestyle with your host, Emmitt Muckles, and Deb N. Goldberg. Thank you, Deb.